Guys and girls, I'll admit it. I don't know a whole lot about basketball. But guess what? I know someone who does. So we're going to be talking to him today, and we're going to be talking about a lot of basketball, the bubble, teams who are going to make it, starting five, all that and more with him. Also, the NHL has its 32nd team, the Seattle Kraken. We're going to release the Kraken and release the information on the history of the name. Also, the MLB has a massive, massive crisis on their hands, and we could be seeing the shutdown of the 2020 season. And also, COVID's effect on sports. This week's feature is the WWE. It's all that and so much more. It's all sports all the time on the Home Turf podcast. Welcome, everybody, to the fourth episode of the Home Turf. My name is Brad. Thank you so much for being with us today. And to start off, we're going to talk about basketball. We're going to talk about basketball with somebody that knows a lot more than I do about the subject. Welcome, Mr. Syed, to the Home Turf podcast. Now, Mr. Syed, we're going to get right into a question. What do you think about the NBA bubble? Do you think it's a good idea or do you think it's a bad idea? Tell me why. I want to hear why.
So I think the bubble solution is the best. I think all businesses have to find a way to continue to do their business. They can't come to a complete halt. That's just not good for anyone, I think. I think the bubble is safe, particularly in the NBA's case, because I think they're doing a good job to protect their players and protect everyone that's in the bubble. I
Mm-hmm.
think they're testing daily. They're monitoring for symptoms. They have plans in place if someone does test positive.
Yeah.
And theoretically, if you think about it, as long as no one enters the bubble that has COVID, COVID shouldn't affect that area. And hopefully the remainder of the season, the playoffs go on smoothly.
Well, there was that report um, about someone on the Clippers. I can't think. It's not Paul George, but it's one of their players. He went to like a gentleman's club.
Yeah, so
He
I
went
think that
out the
was,
bubble.
well, I think what happened with, I think his name was Lou Williams. So I think what happened in
That's
that
the guy.
situation, he had a death as a family friend, I believe. And I think he
Oh,
went
okay. I
to
didn't see that.
so he went to that. And I think after they happened to have dinner, which happened to be at a gentleman's club.
Okay.
And I think that's kind of what happened in that situation. I don't think it was necessarily for a party or other recreational reasons. I think it was just dinner at a gentleman's club.
Okay.
Um,
Was it true
but
that
yeah.
Kawhi went with him or had to pick him up?
Oh, I didn't know hear about that.
Oh no, I thought I
That's
heard.
quite a story right
I
there.
think maybe that's just a conspiracy theory that I read on
Okay.
Twitter. But I you know what, I would believe it honestly. I don't know why. I just would believe it.
I think that's quite a story. That'd be
Get
funny though.
get your
It
star
was
player
true.
to pick you up.
Yeah.
That's
Kawhi is playing the best teammate possible.
yeah.
Um, One thing I would say is like that's my concern about the bubble, though. Like how likely are the players to adhere to the rules?
Yeah, and with
Um,
with the NHL in their bubble situation as well, they have to like they're not allowed to be with other members of other teams, but once that
yeah.
quarantine day or once that quarantine 2 weeks is up, they're allowed to be social with other teams.
Okay.
So again, it's like if someone's sick and they don't know it yet, it's gonna spread pretty quickly.
Yeah, and the other problem is like I don't know. It's hard to be separated from family. Like not even just the idea of leaving for maybe the death of a family member or
Hmm.
friend or whatever. Just to be away from your family, I think can be difficult. So it'll be trying for the players to stick to that.
Yeah. So with that, in your opinion, do you have any teams that are underrated or overrated? Do you think one team is not getting the hype it deserves, or a team that you think is getting too much?
Well, it's hard to answer underrated, overrated because it all depends on perspective. Like even if you look at LeBron, like those that hate him will underrate him.
Mm-hmm.
Those that are fans will probably overrate him to a degree. So I think to like look at it in that way, it's difficult. But there are some teams that I think probably don't get as much shine as they should. Without a doubt, the top three teams though that I think everybody knows are the Clippers, Lakers, and Bucks. I personally have the Clippers and Lakers neck and neck. The Bucks are a little below that. Now, as far as other teams, I think Toronto gets a lot of, or aren't as respected as they should be, I think, as defending champs, especially in the U.S. but they have a well-rounded team. I think they're playing with more confidence. I think winning that championship helped a lot. I still think they'll run into Giannis, so I don't think they have an answer for him. That being said, Nick Nurse is a great coach,
Well,
and
they
they
had
do
an
have.
answer for him last year, right?
I think that was Kawhi. Like I
You
think,
think so?
yeah, I think they have options. Like I think Anunoby's a great defender. Siakam and Ibaka, Gasol, they can all kind of take turns switching onto Giannis and slow him down. But that one lockdown defender that is as reliable as Kawhi, I don't think they have it. At least not yet. Um, but as I said, Nick Nurse is a great coach, so maybe he can maneuver something to stop Giannis. Um, but overall, like there's some teams that I think are getting some hype. I think Boston's good; they're young and talented. I think there's a couple of teams that are a few years away to getting some role players and some pieces to make them championship material. I think Boston is one of them. Miami is another. I love Jimmy Butler. I think he's a great leader, great two-way player. But as I said, they need more pieces to become legitimate contenders. There are two teams that I think get a lot of hype that I wouldn't go as far to say that they're overrated, but I don't believe in Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons in Philadelphia. I think they had a lot of potential. At times they show glimpses of greatness, but they're very inconsistent, and I just can't put any stock in them as legitimate contenders. Definitely for this season, even for the future. Like I think they might need to change that up altogether.
Why do you think they're inconsistent? Like, is it their ego? Is it like the way they play
I,
the game? Or
I don't think I follow them close enough to know specifically what the problem is. I know Embiid has shown signs of maybe a little lack of maturity. I remember last year in the series with the Raptors that sometimes he got I don't know, a little showboating,
Mhm.
but at times it's clear he wanted it. I think he was in tears when they lost. When Kawhi hit the shot, he was literally crying. So it's clear he wants it. The desire is there, but I think maturity has to come and the work ethic has to come. Ben Simmons is forever trying to work on a 3-point shot, and that doesn't seem to be, I don't know, coming to fruition. So I think they've had a lot of opportunities. I think last year they had a good team on paper. I think Jimmy Butler was a great player. They had JJ Redick. So on paper that was a really strong team, but they didn't make it too far. So I think the future, either Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid somehow continue to improve, or they blow that thing up and they start to rebuild. The other team I was going to mention was, sorry not to cut you off, the other team I wanted to mention was Houston, and that was with James Harden and Russell Westbrook. I think they're good players. I think they're great individual players. I don't know how well they can play together or lead a team to a championship.
Mm.
I'd like to see them win. I think they're great individual players. They worked hard in the quarantine. They both look to be in good shape. So it's unfortunate, but I just don't think they're good enough to compete with the likes of the Clippers and likes of the Lakers in the West.
Okay, I was going to ask you if you thought that maybe Houston could upset. Do you see a team that could get by both LA teams, or is it one or the other?
Well, I kind of mentioned with COVID, it makes things unpredictable. So if any of those players or those teams on the Lakers or the Clippers, like one of those key players, get hit with COVID, or a family member gets hit with COVID and they have to leave,
Mm-hmm.
then yeah, I think really like the greatest factor in affecting who will be successful in the playoffs is the ability of the team to stay together at full strength. I think the team that does that will be most successful. Um, but no, like assuming nothing like that happens, the players are able to compete. I don't see anyone surprising the Lakers or Clippers.
Okay,
I,
well,
th- I think I think the East. Sorry, not to cut you off again. I think that you're more likely to get a surprise in the East. I think in the West than in the West.
okay, all right. That was my next question. So moving on, so we're going to talk about starting five, and I know you're a big fan of starting five and how well they can hurt a team or how well they can help a team. So this article was made by Bleacher Report, and it took each starting five, like the core players, and it basically did some math and did baskets they made versus baskets they gave up. So we're just going to quickly go over the top 11. So at number 11 is the Los Angeles Lakers. 10 are the Denver Nuggets. 9 are the Utah Jazz. 8 are the Houston Rockets. 7, Dallas Mavericks. 6 are the Raptors. 5 are the Celtics. 4 are the Heat. Bucks are number 3. 2 are the Clippers. And surprisingly, New Orleans Pelicans are number 1. So what did you think of that article? Did you read that article?
I did come across it. I skimmed through it. I think it's a fine list. Like it seems fairly objective. You mentioned that it uses like statistics, so it's the net rating, and I thought that that's subjective, right? It's a statistic. And I also think they they restricted the starting five to those that had played a certain amount of minutes. I think it was 50 minutes or so.
Yeah,
So
yeah, because like some teams on it, like let's take a look at the Raptors, for example. They had an 11.7 in 280 minutes, but Boston was higher than them in the ranking, and they had 12 and a half in 188 minutes.
okay, yeah. So overall, I thought the list was fine. I think the one thing to point out is that starting five isn't everything. I think it's wrong to assume that the starting five correlates to an NBA championship. I think if you think about it, I think it's the same across a lot of sports that the deeper your team is, in this case in basketball, it's the bench, how good your bench is, that can be a big difference maker. So your top players, they can't be out there for the full 48 minutes. So especially on multiple games in succession. So you need a strong bench to help shoulder the load. And though starting five again is important, I don't think anyone would choose, for example, the New Orleans Pelicans. They were ranked number one, starting five. I don't think anyone has listed them as a true contender for the NBA championship. So I think that just goes to show that there's a bit of discrepancy between, a top starting five team and the likelihood of winning a championship.
Did that starting five include Zion or no?
Yes,
I can't
it did.
remember.
It did. So yeah, like I don't disagree with the ranking, like especially because it's based just on that rating. So I think as long as you look at the article and accept its assumption that it's based solely on this rating, then yeah, it's a fair list. Like it's done mathematically. Kind of hard to argue with, but Pelicans are good. They're a good young team, lots of energy, lots of potential. Williamson, I think, is a legitimate star in the future. I think he's a centerpiece to build around. They do have Lonzo. They do have some other pieces that are good. But again, no one, I think, is looking at them as serious competitors this year, at least.
Okay. Well, that's good to know because, yeah, like I can't name, like I look at this list and I can name like some top players on the top teams, but you go on to like a team like the Brooklyn Nets, I couldn't name one. I couldn't name one.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I couldn't. I'd try my hardest, but I'd have to look it up. And
Yeah.
then
Well, I
I
think. Sorry,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. I didn't want to. Well, one thing I was going to say is like right now, I think Brooklyn Nets are really just they're hampered with injuries, but they have two of the best players in the league in Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. So I think next year they're going to be very, very competitive.
Mhm.
But yeah, this year yeah, there's not too much to remark about though.
All right. Well, with that, we are going to say goodbye to Mr. Syed and our NBA. What do you want to be called now? If you don't want to
No,
be called an analyst, we'll call you something else.
I don't know, guest. Yeah, I don't know, guest analyst or semi analyst. I don't know.
Recurring guest.
Recurring guest, sure. Yeah,
Okay. Well,
I'll
we'll
let you
bring.
come up with the title.
Okay, sounds good. Because yeah, if you don't like analyst, I mean I wanted that. That's what I wanted. But if it's not going to be
I
that,
need
but
more
then
time to be an analyst. I feel like there's some like legitimate and like people that actually study the game on a high level, and I don't want to disrespect them by being called an analyst myself.
well, to me you are because I know nothing compared to what you know. Anyways, we're going to sign off for this time with Mr. Syed, and we are going to hear and talk to him again probably pretty shortly. So with that, I say thank you, and we'll talk to you later.
Thanks for having me.
So moving from the hardwood, we're going to go to the ice. And for anyone who doesn't know, or anyone who is living under a rock, or they're just spending too much time working, if you're a frontline worker, thank you so much for what you're doing. But if there's anyone who doesn't know, the NHL is returning to live sports today, and they're going to be returning to live sports on the weekend with the NHL's return to play player or playoff format. I'm excited. I hope everyone else is excited. Over the past couple months, all I've been watching are reruns of Leaf runs or of Ottawa's 2017 run, Vancouver's 2010, everything like that. And if you're living in the States, you probably watched Chicago 2010 Dynasty Cup run, Pittsburgh's Cup runs. If you live in St. Louis, probably St. Louis's Cup run last year, and, that's great and all. It's fun watching when your team was successful, but it sucks not watching them be successful in the present day, or it sucks not watching them just period. So for me, I'm really excited that NHL is coming back. Now, the NHL made some major, not I guess not the NHL, maybe its 32nd team made a groundbreaking announcement last week. We couldn't get to it on last week's episode because we already had it planned out. And by the time it was announced, there was no chance in really talking about it. We wanted to do some analysis, do some research, do some background information on why the NHL has decided. I know it's probably going to sound corny, but the NHL has decided, and Seattle has decided to release the Kraken. Now, the Kraken, Seattle Kraken, are the 32nd team in the National Hockey League. I'm not surprised by this name. I don't think a lot of people were surprised by this name. I think a lot of people are a little bit upset about the name because it's so predictable. But I love the name. I think it's amazing. Any other name that they were looking at, like the Rain or the Gulls, names that didn't really strike fear. Your name is supposed to strike fear into the hearts of your enemies or strike fear into the heart of the opposing players. So, it makes sense on that logic. But we're just going to go over a couple things like its history, whether or not I like it. I want to hear from you guys whether you think you guys like it. I'm getting mixed bags from the people I have talked to. So I'm thinking it's a 50-50 split. Again, there are some people that like it and there's some people that love it. Turning attention to me, because that's what I love to do, I absolutely love the name. I love the color scheme. I love the logo. When there's a jersey ready and available, I am buying it because number one, it's going to be worth a lot of money someday. And number two, it's so cool. It's badass. Like, it's so just the way it's designed, it's simple, yet it's complex. And you look at it, like, you look at their primary logo, it's an S. The S, and here's part of the first history. The S is for the Seattle Metropolitans that were a hockey team way back early 1900s, and they were actually the first American team to win the Stanley Cup, to lift the Stanley Cup. That's one thing I found really cool when doing background information and researching for the Seattle Kraken, the jersey concept. So that is really cool. Another thing that's just amazing to look at when you look at the jersey is just the blue. It's all blue. Really, it's all blue, and blue is my favorite color. So blue and red, it goes well together. The eye of the Kraken that's in there, and then there's a tentacle. But the thing that I love most about the jersey is its secondary logo. It's an anchor, and in the anchor, on the top part of the anchor, is the Seattle Space Needle. One of the most iconic towers, whatever you want to call it, in the States is the Space Needle in Seattle. I don't care who you ask. I have never been there. I want to go there badly, but it's so intelligent, and it reflects their history as Seattle and its namesake in the jersey. It's just amazing to see. I think it's really smart on the idea of whoever built that or made up that jersey. I think it's just so smart. The jersey, the name, the color scheme, just everything about it. Just everything about it to me screams just professionalism, and it was done well. You could tell that they took their time with this. I don't believe any reports that say they hummed and hawed on Kraken. I don't believe that. Everyone knew, I think, in April, or even when the NHL announced Seattle was getting a team, I think a lot of people said, if it's not Kraken, it's the wrong choice. And I agree with that, with those people. Anyone who said it should have been something else, I don't think so. It doesn't make any sense to me. So here's some history on the Kraken. So apparently the Kraken in the early 1800s was spotted in the city of Seattle on Puget Sound. I don't know where that is. That's where I found it. And the S, again, like I said, represents the Metropolitans, a hockey team from early on, and they were the first to lift the Stanley Cup. A team from the States was the first to win the Stanley Cup. It was the Seattle Metropolitans. So apparently, the urban legend in Seattle that states that the Kraken occupy a bridge that's been collapsed, and I don't know what they've done with it, but a bridge that's been collapsed, and it's called the Galloping Gertie. So that's what it's called. I don't know if the legend states that the Kraken demolished that bridge just by its tentacles. So it's there's an urban legend that they live in Seattle. So it'd be kind of cool. So like I said, the Kraken is a part of Seattle, and it has been a part of Seattle since their, I guess, inception in the 1800s. So it just makes sense for them to do it. Now, again, I want to hear what you guys think. If you guys think this logo is great, or if you think it's different, please let me know. Now, let's look to the future. Let's look at 20. Let's just go away from 2020. Let's just look past it. Let's just forget this year never happened, because it's been an abomination of a year. What are we going to expect next year, 2021? Well, that is the year that Seattle will enter the NHL. So we have an expansion draft to look forward to. We have a fantasy draft to, or not fantasy, but a NHL entry draft to look forward to for Seattle, for them to build up their roster and build up their team for 2021 and beyond. Now, what's it going to look like is remains to be seen, because the NHL realized they screwed up with Vegas. They made Vegas a powerhouse of a team early on, making side deals, making deals before the expansion draft, saying, "Oh, we'll trade you this guy, but we want this," or if we take this person in the draft, then you have to give us this. The NHL is not going to allow that to happen this time, I guarantee you, because expansion teams have always been bottom of the barrel for at least 5 years of their inception, and then this was the first time in NHL history that an expansion draft team or an expansion team went all the way to the Cup final. That doesn't happen. And I remember watching the first game in Vegas and watching them closely. They just seemed like a team that, like normally an expansion team, they don't know how to play hockey, or it. Like, things may change because so many people play the game of hockey, watch the game of hockey, study the game of hockey, and there is a coach that is available right now, maybe not, but you could see Mike Babcock. I think you might see Mike Babcock as the first coach of the Seattle Kraken. But again, we're not going to speculate, because that's way far down in the future, 2021. But we have something to look forward to in the Seattle expansion team. I'm looking forward to it. Big fan of the name. Big fan of just everything that Seattle has done up to this point. Their arena going 100% green. Everything about it is it's screaming just new age hockey. I think you're going to see a lot of teams switch to green arenas, but everything to me just screams just professionalism done. If this is what we're going to see from the Seattle franchise when it does start playing the game of hockey, you can really look forward to some professionalism on their side. So you may have noticed during this episode that there's no breaks in between. I figured to cut down on time and to kind of take a different approach to this, we've decided not to add any music for the pauses in between breaks. We're just going to go from one topic to the other. That way you guys are fully engaged and you don't have to take a break. The music was just an idea to, make sure that everyone understood that there was a break in between, and it was also to give me a break. But we're going to try it differently this episode, and if we like it, we might just keep it. So we're moving on from hockey to baseball. And baseball, I've used this word many times to describe the situation that baseball is in this past, I'd say month and a half. And that word is crisis. And the word crisis went from all lowercase letters to all uppercase. Like, you're screaming the word crisis. Like, when the pandemic started, they said this was a crisis. That is more true today with the game of baseball than any other sport. And I thought baseball was the only sport that was going to succeed with COVID season, because they were the only sport in North America that wasn't doing a hub city. And guess what? I was wrong. I will admit it. I was wrong. This is just an abomination on the sport of baseball. You have 14 players from one team, staff and coaches, because it's not all just players, but 14 members of the team are sick, and 4 more today have been confirmed sick. This is not good. And this is just not affecting the Miami Marlins. This is affecting everybody, from umpires to visiting clubs to staff working at the ballparks, limited as they may be. This is affecting everybody. Let's look at the effect that this has had on other teams or just other people. So now let's start with Philadelphia, a team that is wanting to play their home opener, wanting to go play the Yankees, Bryce Harper versus, I don't know, Gary Sanchez, Aaron Judge, and Giancarlo Stanton. Let's just say that. They can't do that because they have to quarantine because they played them all weekend. You don't know how long they were exposed. And a lot of the players, as I'm watching on TV, as I'm watching the games, a lot of players don't have masks on. It's optional. I think it should be mandatory now, given the results of the Miami Marlins. It should be mandatory, and not just the players, the umpires too. Some umpires are not playing. You look at Jumbo Joe West, and you look at him. I'm not gonna worry. It's done. I don't worry. If Joe West got it, I don't think you'd survive. But anyways, it should be mandatory for the umpires to wear a mask as well. And okay, so let's look at the Phillies. So the Phillies, they can't play their home opener. They can't play 2 games because they were playing Miami this weekend. And let's look at, Baltimore. A team like Baltimore who went and took 2 of 3 from Boston. That is surprising. Baltimore is crazy. But anyways, they can't play 2 games now because they're going to Miami and they have to be quarantined. They can't play. Well, that sucks. So let's look at, let's go back to Philadelphia. The Philadelphia visiting clubhouse all the staff have to quarantine because, Miami came in and they were all sick. Well, not all of them, but majority of them were sick. Okay. So now we have 3 games that have been canceled or postponed, whatever you want to call it. And now you have a team like New York coming into Philadelphia. Oh, you got to bring your clubhouse staff because the visiting ones are quarantining. So now they have to bring extra staff. So if there was someone on the New York plane that had COVID-19, guess what? There's more people to infect, thus growing the numbers. See how stupid that is? That makes no sense for MLB. And yesterday David Price tweeted that this is the reason why he didn't play. And because Rob Manfred doesn't have the safety and health of players in his mind. You know what? I have 100% agreeing with David Price right now. Rob Manfred has, in these past month and a half, Rob Manfred has ruined the game of baseball for me and for probably other fans as well. This is horrible, absolutely horrible. And I think, I said it before, I'll say it again, Rob Manfred is going to go down as one of the worst commissioners in the MLB because of this crisis. The crisis can either do 2 things, or the pandemic can either do 2 things. It can show you who the good people are, or it can show you people's real colors. And we're seeing Rob Manfred's real colors right now because this is awful. And his wait-and-see attitude is not good because his wait-and-see attitude is just going to add to more gas being put on the fire. I guarantee it, because you're not going to see things get better. You're probably going to see things get worse. And it's going to get so bad you're going to see teams maybe being told to sit out the season. So you got all started up. You got going for 5 games. That's not good. Or you're going to see a termination of the season, suspension of the season, and it'll be a washout. It's not good. Just when the MLB decided and the MLB Players Association decided to expand playoffs, which I don't know why they did after I did my prediction show. They shouldn't have done that. Now I have to kind of think about it, but it is what it is. Anyways, but this is just so dumb. It's just, I can't believe how stupid this is. And I trash talk and I crapped on hub cities, and guess what? No positive cases. MLS has been going almost for about a month, no positive cases. NBA, no positive cases. NHL released a statement yesterday, zeros during phase 3. And during phase 4, guess what? I think you're going to see the same, but that remains to be seen. What the MLB has done during the COVID-19 pandemic has, again, shown its true colors as a game and a sport, just wanting to make as much money as possible without a care about its players, its fans, or its sponsors. Because it literally is just wanting to take as much money as they can, and they don't really give a crap about what happens. That's what's happening right now. Yes, the players have had the chance to opt out, but I'm not blaming the players. What David Price said yesterday in his tweet about not caring for the players' health and safety is 100% true, because Rob Manfred is doing nothing with this situation. I'll take up here in Canada. Look at the Toronto Blue Jays. They have to play their home games in Washington, and they're going to play them in Philadelphia. Guess what? Now, since there's a coach and a clubhouse staff that has been tested positive for COVID-19, guess what? Toronto gets a weekend off, which isn't good. When you play the game of baseball, a weekend off is too much time. And Philadelphia can't play, and Washington now is a weekend without baseball. But don't worry, because the New York Yankees, they're fine. And Baltimore Orioles, they're fine. Rob Manfred was able to do something about them. Miami Marlins, Philadelphia Phillies, Toronto Blue Jays, and the Washington Nationals. That's 4 teams that aren't playing baseball right now. And that's going to hurt them. Those are the teams that, now that the playoffs have been expanded, they have a better chance of making the playoffs. I think Philly's going to still make the playoffs because they have one of the best teams. But still, it's not the point. Look at Toronto. Just look at what's happened in Toronto the past 2-3 weeks. And what has Rob Manfred said about the situation? Absolutely nothing. Just dead silence, dead air. Same thing with any team that causes a problem that is not significant. So to him, to Rob Manfred, the Toronto situation is not significant. Same with Philadelphia. Same with Washington. It's just not significant enough for him to do or say anything about it. With Miami, it was significant enough because it was gaining national attention. And you're going to see, if the trend continues, you're going to see a shutdown of baseball. And that is what you don't want. If you are Rob Manfred, which I can't say as I envy him right now, I would be embarrassed if I was Rob Manfred. But anyways, if I was Rob Manfred, this is getting to the point where if something happens that's even worse, or something that comes a little bit close to this, you have to shut everything down, because now you have 4 teams, and guess what? It's only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse. If there were 2 teams that had this problem, you'd have to shut it down because it would be double. You'd have 8. You'd have almost a third of your league not playing. And Rob Manfred has completely just sat by, not caring about anybody but himself. And he just oh, okay, well, it'll solve itself. Toronto situation will solve itself. Philadelphia situation, it'll solve itself. Guess what, Rob? This isn't solving itself. Look at what Trump's doing. It's not solving itself. You actually have to lead the MLB, and you actually have to do something about this. Don't just sit back and say, oh, well, they'll get over it. They're athletes. They've got good health. Yeah, guess what? This virus can do some damage. And if you're not willing to do anything, I bet you there's someone who will. But right now, it ain't Rob Manfred. So now we're going to go on from one greedy rich guy to another. And this week, for COVID's effect on professional sports, we're going to be talking about the WWE and Vince McMahon. Now, there's probably a very select few that listen to the podcast that like WWE or that still follow it. I'm one of those people who I don't follow it anymore. I used to when I was a kid, but I don't anymore. But here's something about the WWE that I think people should know. The WWE is not really caring about its wrestlers or its staff, because out of all the professional sports leagues in North America, whether or not you want to call WWE a professional sport, but anyways, they never stopped. They literally, like, when everyone else was shutting down, WWE was saying, no, we got to keep going. And for a while they were successful, but then they've had a couple COVID positive tests causing them to make big changes. But we're going to get into that a little later. We're just going to start with basically what happened in March when the pandemic was hitting its height in North America. We're just going to talk about that. So in March, the WWE has a big event for anybody who follows, and anyone who doesn't, you know the event. It's WrestleMania. It happens every year around March, April. It's the biggest event of the year for WWE. It brings in all their money, and it's basically like it's almost become like a holiday, because it's just a massive enterprise in itself. It's a weekend full of things to do. You've got the actual show, you've got the Hall of Fame, you've got Access, you've got just a whole weekend devoted to WrestleMania, and it's just the be all end all of sports shows. To see what began with WrestleMania number 1 to what it is now, it's just insane. But this year's was a little different because they decided to do 2 shows, 4 hours each. That is a long time. And the reason they did it, and Vince McMahon is smart about this, is because no one else was on. He didn't have any competition. So guess what? When WrestleMania aired on pay-per-view on the Saturday and Sunday, it was the most watched and most bought WrestleMania because no one else had anything else to watch on TV. So guess what? He was able to take those people who normally don't watch wrestling, or they watch only WrestleMania, and then they just buy into it and give Vince all this money, and they just haven't stopped. They've literally done it in one place, just in the Performance Center in Florida. They've literally just done it in one place. They've never traveled around. There are no fans. Recently, they've decided to have the development wrestlers, so the people who are in the kind of like the lower league of WWE, they've been the fans. And guess what? A couple of them got sick. So now they have to wear masks. And now they have glass, I guess, I don't know if you want to call them shields, around the barricades surrounding the ring. So that way, if the wrestlers go outside the ring, they're not going to get sick. That's ridiculous. Just number one, just don't have any fans. And then, because if you have just your talent watching the show, they're gonna get sick, and they did get sick. And now you kind of have to stumble back a little bit and be like, okay, maybe we shouldn't have done that. Maybe we should have just let everyone just stay away. And that's what they should have done. But they didn't. But that's the great thing about WWE, or not the great thing, but just the most you want to call it almost, trying to think of the word, just it's unique. It's just unique in WWE. It didn't stop. It literally just kept going. When cases were rising, they went on. Cases went down and staggered in the US, they went on. And when they're on the rise again, it's still going on. Now they've also have, WWE is known for its live entertainment. Live. They're not doing that right now. Everything is taped. Whether you believe it or not, if that is live, it's taped. Even the pay-per-views are taped well in advance. They're having cinematic matches, doing them outdoors. That way, if they're in close contact, they're outdoors. They don't have to worry about it. Like, they're smart. They know what they're doing. They know the health risks, and they're kind of following the guidelines. But they're greedy. Or should I say Vince McMahon is greedy, because he's not only doing Raw and SmackDown and pay-per-views, he's doing the development brand NXT, which I believe is the name of it. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe it's NXT. But that man is making the most money during this virus outbreak. And he's more concerned, I think, about earning more money than he is about his talent's safety. You're seeing guys, like you're looking at, I can't think of his name right now, but he had cancer, and he came back and he wrestled. But now he's not wrestling anymore because of the COVID-19 situation, and he had cancer. So if he gets sick, he can't, he's not, he's going to be probably SOL because his immune system has already taken cancer and it's probably a repressed immune system, and now he would have to fight off COVID-19. So you have wrestlers opting out, but I guarantee you they're not getting paid. I guarantee you they're not fulfilling their part of the contract, so why should Vince McMahon do his part of the contract? So, and they get just so angry at there were talents who went online and said, I've got COVID-19, you should all wear a mask. And Vince McMahon was unhappy that they did that because it reflects negatively on his brand. Vince McMahon is a smart businessman. I will give him that. But what he's doing right now and what the WWE is doing right now and has done throughout this pandemic is appalling. They should not be like right now. It's okay because things are kind of starting to go down in Florida, but at the height of the pandemic and then at the height where cases just shot up in Florida, they should have stopped, and they didn't, and that's a problem. WWE is unique because they were the only sports entertainment or professional sport that did not shut down. UFC shut down for 2 weeks as we discussed last week. But Vince McMahon doesn't answer to anybody, whereas Dana White has sponsorships. So WWE can have done whatever it wanted, and that's exactly what they did. They did what they wanted. They basically they made more money during this time than I think they've made in years because a lot of people are getting very fed up with WWE, and I think this has made people just buy in because there's nothing else on TV, and the WWE needs to either stop or slow down. Don't rush things. Don't go into wanting to have fans ASAP because you're going to get people sick that way. And unfortunately, there are reports out there, and just as late and new as yesterday, I saw reports saying that the WWE is wanting to have fans in its building or going into different buildings in September. Around the middle of September, they want to have fans back in their building. Anyone who knows the situation going on with COVID knows that it is a bad thing. Do not do that. Hopefully they won't, but I wouldn't be surprised given the knowledge I know about Vince McMahon. So with that note, we're going to say goodbye to you guys and girls for this week's episode of The Home Turf. I hope you enjoyed it. I want to again thank Mr. Syed for coming on and talking basketball with me, even though sometimes, like I said, I don't know what I'm talking about. So I thank him again from the bottom of my heart, and hopefully we can talk to him again soon. Again, please wear a mask if you are not, you need to, unless you have a health condition that prohibits you from wearing one. Please listen to the health experts. Please just stay safe. So on that note, please enjoy all the sports on TV this week and in the coming weeks. I know I'll be watching. You better be, and we'll see you next time on the Home Turf Podcast.